How's it going, you awesome bunch of bakers? Hope you're having a fantastic day so far. Welcome back to another video. Today, I'll show you how to make silky smooth potato bread. So let's get in the kitchen and get started. There are several different methods and ingredients that can be used for making bread softer and lighter. Eggs, fats, dairy products, the scalding method, various flours, and so on. Each can be used on their own, but a combination of them makes it even better. Potato might be one of the most surprising ingredients for achieving ultimate softness. You can find a whole video about the use of potatoes and the principles of baking playlist if you're interested. I go into far more detail in that video. This is just a recipe for a super soft sandwich loaf. We have made a similar recipe before, but this one has been improved and simplified. So if you enjoyed the old one, you will love this one. So let's get right to it. Let me show you how it's made so you can make it yourself, starting with ingredients for the dough. We'll need some white bread flour, yeast, salt, sugar, an egg, butter, potato. And if you're going to make this in a regular loaf tin and bake it uncovered, you can use an egg for glazing. I'll use my Pullman tin so I won't need it. And here's the equipment that we need: a bowl, scales, a dough scraper, a temperature probe, a brush if you're gonna glaze it, and a baking tin. My USA pan Pullman tin always comes in handy for a loaf like this. If you want to make it in a regular 2-pound loaf tin, reduce the amounts of all the ingredients by about 20%. Otherwise the dough will be too large. Okay, let's begin the process by preparing the potatoes. Boiled potatoes may not be as flavorful, but they will be smoother when we mash them, and also as a byproduct there will be potato water left over, which will be added to the bread dough. Okay, drop the potatoes in a pan with some cold water, set it on high heat, and boil for around 25 minutes until the potatoes are completely soft. You can use different varieties of white potato for this recipe. A waxy potato with a yellow interior will make the softest bread, but a starchy white potato will work pretty well too. Reserve the required amount of potato water and leave it on the side. Remove the potatoes from the pan and then mash them until they are completely smooth. A fork will work pretty well for this job. If you are making a larger batch and baking several loaves, you can use a potato masher or potato ricer. After mashing, leave the potato to cool down completely. My kitchen was around 22 degrees Celsius or 72 degrees Fahrenheit, so I let my ingredients drop down to that temperature. I'm aiming for a final dough temperature of around 25 degrees Celsius or 77 degrees Fahrenheit, and this should get me there. To make the dough, in a large bowl, combine the cooled down potato water, the yeast, the salt, the sugar, the egg, the mashed potato, and the softened butter, and then whisk it all up until the salt and sugar have completely dissolved and the potato is broken up. Then add the final ingredient, the white bread flour. Grab your dough scraper and mix it to a dough. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, various methods and ingredients can be combined to make the result exponentially better. Don't get me wrong, potato alone would make a pretty soft bread, but when you combine it with a little bit of sugar, some butter and an egg, it results in ultimate softness. So don't be afraid to combine various methods and ingredients. It may just turn out to be the best loaf you've ever made. And if you are curious to learn more about these ingredients, check out the Principles of Baking playlist. Right after mixing, let's quickly check the temperature. 25 degrees Celsius or 77 degrees Fahrenheit is what I was aiming for, and that is exactly what I got. I'm making this dough with the cold bulk fermentation method, so I placed it in the fridge to cool down before giving it its first and only fold. After folding, you'll go back into the fridge for another 18 to 24 hours of fermentation. This will result in superior flavor, but as some of you already know, cold fermentation works against softness. But this loaf will still turn out amazingly soft, even with the cold fermentation method. But you can certainly make it on the same day. Leave it to bulk ferment at room temperature for around 2 hours, giving it a fold halfway through. Then once the dough is doubled in size, prepare your baking tin, brush it with some butter to make the crust nice and toasty, and then proceed to the final shaping. My dough spent around 20 hours in the fridge. The final shaping is pretty basic. Lightly dust the table with flour, drop the dough on the table with the smooth side down, then flatten it out. Shape it into a chunky triangle shape, and then roll it up. Try to roll it as evenly as you can. If the loose piece of dough at the bottom starts becoming narrower than the roll, just pull it out sideways and keep rolling. After shaping, place the dough in the prepared baking tin with the seam side down. Then cover it and leave it for the final proof. If you cold fermented it, it may take around 3 hours. If you ferment at room temperature, it might take an hour to an hour and a half. It needs to grow to at least twice its size. During the final hour of fermentation, preheat the oven, 170 degrees Celsius, 340 Fahrenheit, fan on. That'll be 190 Celsius or 375 Fahrenheit, fan off. If you're not going to cover your loaf, you can glaze it with egg or with some different glaze at this point. I'm going to use the lid that came with my tin to make a nice square loaf. I brushed the inside of the lid with some butter to ensure that the top crust gets nice and toasty too. Let's slide the lid on and get this bad boy in the oven. The initial bake will take 40 minutes, after which we'll remove the loaf from the tin and place it back into the oven for another 10 minutes of baking. This will finish off the crust and will prevent the loaf from losing its shape as it cools down. I like to place it in the oven on its side and then turn it over after 5 minutes. But there you go, that's how you make a super soft potato bread. All you need to do now is leave it to cool down and then tuck in. This is one of the ultimate white sandwich loaves. It has a crispy toasted crust, has a super soft interior, it slices beautifully. You can get nice thin slices from it without squishing the loaf. It has a subtle fermentation flavor, it is a little bit sweet, and if you use the tasty potato, you'll definitely taste it in the bread too. You can throw any toppings at this bread and it will taste great. And remember how simple it was to make. If you love your white bread, I really encourage you to try this out. I'm sure you will love it. So what do you think this recipe? Have you used potatoes in bread making? Let me know down in the comments. You want to see videos like this one? Click over here. Subscribe to the channel, click right here. That's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.